Are you saying no? Saying no is an overlooked boundary. A lot of people don't like to say no. They don't want to say no because saying no is uncomfortable. We're taught that at a young age. You don't say no to people, you say yes to people. But if you don't say no, you're not creating boundaries. It's important to set boundaries for your mental health, spiritual health, physical health, emotional health. Boundaries, learning how to set boundaries. And part of that is learning to say no. If people are around you and they're going to parties every weekend, they're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're having sex, and they want you at those parties, and you're going because they're your friends or they're your family, you have to be willing to say no, to set the boundary, to protect your energy and yourself. Because when you go to those events, you're going into spaces of low vibrational energy. That used to be me. I used to throw parties all the time. And then I stopped. I also realized my friend group wasn't really as strong as I thought it was, or as connected as I thought it was. But as I rose in vibration, I started saying no to things. My ex would ask me to go to different events. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to. I don't feel good when I go to those events. Corporate events where people are drinking and just plastered out of their mind, where the music is blaring so loud I can physically feel it affecting my body. I didn't like those. I'd always say yes to do things if she asked me, because that's who I was. But when I learned how things affected my vibration, how things affected my body, my mind, I started saying no. I don't want to do that. It doesn't feel good. It's not a full body yes to me. If it's not a full body yes, why would I want to do it? So I learned to say no and set boundaries and be like, no, you can go. If you want to go, you can go. Have fun. I'm staying at home because I don't like being around those people. I don't like the environment that takes place in. It affects me spiritually. It brings me down. You have to set boundaries to protect your spiritual energy. And by setting boundaries, you actually start to learn more about what's going on in your life. Are these people really beneficial to me? Or am I just a product of circumstance? If you're going to parties with friends, if you start saying no, do they get angry at you? What is the dynamic? Are they okay with you saying no? True friends, if you say no to them, they're like, cool, we'll see you when you come around. Others will peer pressure you because they are unhealed. They are at a lower level of consciousness, so you get peer pressure. Don't fall for the peer pressure. Set your boundary. If you know it's your boundary, say no. Stick to it. Protect yourself. And if they get angry, if they get into a space where they are coming at you because you're different, you're changing, that's on them. That's their reaction, not your response. You're taking care of yourself. Your only responsibility is to yourself. I went through this with my friends and my ex. My friends, I had a group I've mentioned many times, the parties I used to go to, and the man who said no to me, setting his boundary of you will not reveal who I am to people, essentially. I'd go to those parties and people would be like, he's really changed. That's the phrasing that I heard from my ex. They're talking about how you've changed. And I changed because I started being creative. I started coming into my power. I started saying no to people. No, I don't want to go to this event because why would I want to go be around a bunch of drunk people? A bunch of people doing heroin and other drugs. Why would I want to go be around that environment? And I never judged people for what they did. I understood they were at their level of consciousness. But when I was going to the parties, I didn't understand that even though I wasn't somebody to get into like drugs or anything like that, I drank back, my 20s, very, very early 30s. But when I would go, I wouldn't have fun. It would be very low vibrational. I'd come home, I'd be miserable. My energy would be drained. They'd suck the light right out of me. And it took me forever to realize what was happening is I was going into those parties as a light and they were sucking me dry. So I had to start saying no. And when I started saying no, people were like, oh, he's changed. What's wrong with him? Why isn't he doing what we want him to do? Because that's the whole idea. A lot of people operate with, you're my friend because you do what I want you to do. You come where I want you to come. You act how I want you to act. But when you start becoming your authentic self, when you start saying no, you really find out who around you is the true friend, the true supportive person. Because they're going to respect your boundaries and they're going to honor them. And they're still going to be your friend. They're not going to get angry with you. They're going to be like, okay, why are you setting that boundary? Why do we need to do? Why do you need to be away? Is there anything I can do to help? Saying no is important for career. If you're overworked, if you haven't had a pay raise that you've been working towards for years, if you have a boss who's treating you poorly, saying no in career is something that people have lost. I know it's more difficult because a lot of people don't want to lose their job by saying no. But if you don't speak your truth, if you don't set your boundaries and make them heard, then you will be overworked. You will be underpaid. Sometimes just setting the boundary and saying, this is what I want, brings it to you. Or in my case, when I was employed back in my 20s and I left the company I was with, and the boundaries were finally clear and what I was unhappy with was finally cleared, and they went, oh, here, we'll give you this. It was too little, too late. I left anyway. And you might find out that what they give you, like in my case, is kind of like a slap in the face. Like, we're trying to keep you, but even after all those talks, they still didn't see or listen to what you were saying. So who's beneficial for you? Who's going to listen to your boundaries? Who's going to listen to what your needs are? And who are you going to say no to clear your energy and be your authentic self? It's your choice what you do. My partner used to come to me and I would be unhappy because I'd be like, why are you doing this? This makes you miserable. As I went on a healing journey and trying to get them to do their own healing journey, the answer was because I have to. And I'd always be like, no, you don't. And she'd be like, yes, I do. I have to. Whether it was career, friends, family, all that, which created issues in our life beyond the issues that already existed, because she would go out and come back miserable and project it on me. She couldn't say no. I learned to say no to those events and to her, which protected my energy. But you never have to do anything. Nobody is forcing you to do anything. If your reason, if you think, but I have to, you're not allowing yourself the choice. You have a choice in every situation as to what you do. It is your choice. If you're in a toxic relationship, it is your choice. It was my choice to stay in the toxic relationship as long as I did. It is your choice too. If you're in a toxic career, it's your choice to stay there. I understand this idea of, well, I have bills to pay or I don't have a situation to get myself out of, but are you working your way out of it? Are you setting your boundaries? Are you trying for something new? Or are you just stuck in this idea of, I don't have a choice? That was an excuse I heard for years. I don't have a choice. Never made sense to me. We always have choice. We can always pick one path or the other. It's up to you what you do. Which way do you go, left or right? Standard, quid pro quo, or is it status quo? Status quo is the word I'm looking for. Status quo? Or do you go the other way? Do you take the yes? for yourself and be your authentic self, what are you going to do? You have to say no. You have to set boundaries. You have to know yourself, your wants, your desires, your needs, and make sure they are protected. If you see me looking off every once in a while, there's my neighbors outside watching me through the window while shoveling snow. I could go out and I could say, hey, stop looking at me and set a boundary. It's not one I care about. So you also have to look around and say, what boundaries do you really care about? So it's kind of good timing that happened, because I would have never thought to talk about this. But what boundaries are necessary? Some boundaries aren't really necessary. Some people say no to things, and they're just saying no because they can. But do you really need that boundary? What boundary is necessary? What are you trying to achieve? You should always protect your energy. You should always respect yourself. In my relationship, there were toxic things going on. You know, I'm very truthful in the idea that I gave up. I gave up years into it. I didn't care anymore. Just kind of gave up and just sat and took the toxicity and did what I could to transmute it, because I thought that was all there was. And that's a long story, as I've said before, that I'll talk about at another time. But it wasn't one-sided. But as I healed and grew and came into my authentic self, as people tried to keep me down because they knew I was going to be uncontrolled, started saying no to friends, to my partner, a lot to my partner, because I wasn't going to take it anymore. I set my boundaries. I'm like, this is not acceptable. Lying is not acceptable. Hiding things and thinking you're not lying is not acceptable. You know, that was one of the things I had a revelation of, where things were being hidden from me that I intuitively knew but had no proof of until later on. Hiding things is not acceptable. It is lying without a mission in that partnership dynamic, depending on what it is. For us, it was finances and things and other stuff that had been happening. So what are your boundaries? Are your boundaries about creating honesty in a dynamic? Honesty with yourself. Saying no. My guides came to me once and they said, you have to be honest with yourself. And I was like, let me back up. They came to me and they said, you have to be honest. And I was like, I am honest. And they were like, we know you're honest. You always do your best to tell your truth and all that sort of thing. Like, yeah. Ask me a question and I'll answer it as honestly as I can. In that moment, I should say. In that moment and level of consciousness. And so I tried to be honest my whole life, and they were very clear. They're like, yeah, we know. Except for one thing. You have to be honest with yourself. And I was like, I am honest with myself. And they go, no, you're not. You're honest with those outside of yourself. You're honest with friends. You're honest with people. When they ask you questions, you answer in an honest way, as honestly as you can. But you're not honest with yourself. And that was a very big wake-up call for me, where I started going, why would they say that? And then realizing I wasn't honest with myself. I was not honest, because what was happening was my relationship right in front of me. Lying, hiding, manipulating, all these things that I didn't realize until later were methods of control that I was experiencing and did not know about, because my dad controlled me, but very vocally, very in your face. Do this now. Do not upset me type of ways. This was a hidden layer, an opposite, a subtle version of control. And so I started realizing, you're right, I'm not honest because I know all this stuff intuitively, but I had to sit down and honestly just lay it all out, even write it. I wrote it out on paper one day. Every single intuitive thing I had, every lie that I knew about, all these different things, I wrote them out on a sheet of paper. And I was going to confront her with them at one point. I never did because things went a different way and it's for the better they did. But I had written them all out. And I looked at them and I'm like, wow, I am in a toxic relationship. I looked at them and it was like, poof, the honesty with myself came. And I started looking at these things and I started going, I have to say no. I have to say no to this. I have to say no more to that, no more to this, no more to that. Which is what led to the spiral of the relationship ending, because until I confronted the issues, until I started setting the boundaries, it was like those problems didn't exist. If we fought about them, we would fight about them, and the next day she would be like, oh, everything's okay. Like nothing happened. Like that was in the past. But not in the past, not in the way like healthy, conscious people move past something, but in the past as then that never happened. You never said those things and would not see me for what I was saying or hear what I was saying, and would just continue the cycle of what was going on. When I started setting the boundaries, when I started saying no more of this, no more of that, this is unacceptable in a relationship. This is unacceptable. This is why it hurts me. This is I feel, and I use those using those statements when I'm setting boundaries. If I feel like this makes me feel this way. This makes me feel that way. This is how I feel. I don't feel seen. I don't feel appreciated. I don't feel loved. And here's why. And here are the boundaries we need to work on. Here are the boundaries, the things that need to be shared, the things that can't be done anymore to be a healthy relationship. The boundaries that will allow me to be my healthy self, my authentic self. Saying no is what made me realize more and more how toxic my relationship was. Because when you say no to somebody who's extremely unhealed, they react in unhealed ways. If you say no to somebody in your career and they react poorly, it's not a healthy environment for you. If you say no to a friend and they react poorly, they're reacting in an unhealthy way, and it's not your responsibility. It's their job to heal themselves, but you have to set the boundary. And like in a relationship, if you don't say no, if you're not honest with yourself on what your boundaries are and say no to create those boundaries, and do it in a healthy way, obviously, telling them, speaking your truth about how you feel about what the situation's doing to you. In my case, it was all denied, even though I had proof. And they reacted in very negative, unhealed ways. And the cycle continued, but I kept setting my boundaries. I set my boundaries at my old job. I've set my boundaries with friends. And I had to set my boundaries there until finally we split ways. It all started with saying no, to clear my energy, to be my authentic self, to have my energy protected, to know my limits, to know what was acceptable to me, and to tell the universe what I was willing to experience. Because if you don't say no and set those boundaries, the universe keeps bringing you all that negative stuff. It's a way of telling the universe what you want. And saying no also means walking away, knowing when it's time to walk away. I knew years before I left that I should have walked away. My counselor had walked me through it in seated ways, not saying it, but looking back on it, it was very seated. Like, are you sure this is what you want? Knowing in my soul what I wanted, but me just being okay and accepting the status quo because that's what I knew. And I wasn't used to saying no in a relationship or friendships. Saying no in my career was important. It brought me the projects I wanted rather than the projects that create me anxiety, worry, and pay little money. I ended up with better projects, less time, more money, and clients who were far happier with my work. It was a trade-off. I said no, and the universe was like, you're more valuable now. I did that in my career when I was working a day job. I said no, I walked away. I started freelancing the next day, and I've been free ever since from the standard corporate environment. People would tell me along the whole way, you need to go get a job. You need to go do this. You need X, Y, Z. And I'd tell them no, and they'd look at me like I was stupid, like I was crazy. Why would he say no about this? You need to marry your ex. I heard that often. I'm like, no, absolutely not. It doesn't feel right. There's something wrong here. When the pandemic hit, I kept being told, you need to go get a job waiting tables. No, why would I do that? I'm paying my bills. My bills are taken care of. Why would I go get a job just because I'm working 10 hours a week? I'm still paying my way. During this time, my ex was working 80 hours, and I can see how jealousy comes back and that sort of thing. Again, a longer story. But it all comes back to this idea of saying no. I would have ended up doing things that would have been detrimental to my mental health, emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health if I had said yes to people. If I had listened to everything my ex said, I would still be in that toxic relationship. I would be doing things that I absolutely did not like. If I listened to my friends, I'd be working jobs I did not want. I'd be doing things I did not like. Learn to say no. Be honest with yourself. Sit down and be honest with yourself. What are the things you are trying to ignore, trying to deny? Put a list together, like I did. Put a list together and be honest with yourself. Are these things you want to continue experiencing, or do you want to shift? Is it about your career? Make a list of all the things you're denying about your career that are keeping you there. Is it about your relationship? Is it about your friends? Is it about your family? What are all the things that you're ignoring that are making you unhappy? If it's making you unhappy, then a boundary needs to be set. Because you deserve to be happy. You are worthy. You are deserving of love and happiness. But you have to understand what's making you unhappy so that you can learn what boundary needs to be set and prepare yourself to set it. And that's a topic of itself and how to set boundaries. Most of it comes down to speaking your truth and sticking to it. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I'll share more on this journey. Like I said, it's a big topic. My journey itself is a big topic, and as I said, there were issues on both sides, but I learned to say no, really say no, through my relationship and through the friends I had and sticking with it, and how if I said no, it actually brought me happiness because I wasn't doing what other people wanted anymore. I was doing what I wanted. I was creating happiness. I was creating heaven on earth. So work on that. Work on creating your heaven on earth. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you all. You all deserve love and happiness, and you're all worthy of it. Thank you, and I'm grateful for everybody.